Ladies and gentlemen, it is my hope that this video is going to find you when you're doing fine and you are in good health. I'm also doing fine at this peripheral end. So guys, it is with greatest shock and greatest fear that all that is happening into Kenya, the president himself has buried his head in the sun. Again, I'm doing this video. At the same time, I'm very happy man. And at the same time, I'm very disappointed man. Two things involved. Why am I not happy? And why am I so happy? I'm a happy man today just because all Kenyans of all tribes have spoken and have a statement that they've made about the financial bill that reject it. So all Kenyans talked. What I'm not happy about is just because the life has been lost. The peaceful demonstrations has been turned so violent just because the police have turned it so. So guys, I want to talk to us. If you're watching this video, wherever you are, kindly pray to Kenya. And I need also to talk to the protesters that please, consistency, and let's make it so peaceful, and let's make it a constant thing so that we can speak truth to the power. You know, what is perturbing too much now going forward? It's the head of the state, that is the president, William Samoei Ruto. At the moment that Kenya is facing the unrest, that he ought to have listened to the people, he's just decided never to listen. So, it is quite unfortunate because the speech and the State of the Nation address itself is not in the tandem with the current situation. The president himself is not in the, has lost the touch completely with the politics on the ground. Maybe the president fears something that we don't know. He needs to come and tell us what he has signed, that he fears so much that he needs to protect than the subject who elected him to that throne. You know, guys, that speech alone was not supposed to be issued by the president. And in fact, I'm greatly sure that the person who wrote that speech did a big blow to the head of state. At this time, that the president ought to have used a lot on, ought to have acted fatherly, and ought to have retreated. The president chooses to call the protesters criminals. The president chose to chest thump, to use bravado and such kind of a harsh tone in the status of address, and even decided to deploy the military. We are not a military state. We are not a banana republic. Are you there? You cannot deploy the army without the house, the parliament itself authorizes. And at that time when we were doing such, the parliament itself was not into sitting. So at what time? So the president has completely chosen to ignore our Constitution 2010, which is so enshrined, because the power belongs to the people, and the peaceful picketing in the Article 37, it's allowed in our Constitution, and it's enshrined going forward. So guys, in this video today, I'm not going to address myself to the letter, but I'm just going to address myself to how the GenZs, the young generations, will oust President William Ruto come 2027 out of power. So, going forward, if you're coming across this channel for the very first time, kindly click on the notification bell. Like this video so that whenever I upload a video, YouTube shall notify you going forward. So let's dive in after the break. So guys, without further ado, allow me to just dive in straight away. So the reasons why I'm saying the presidential press is not in the reality, is not in the tandem with the people's need, because the president himself has just ignored and just stamped and decided to call Kenyans who were involved in a peaceful protest, call them gangs and militia and criminals, and started saying that there is an hand of people who are sponsoring this kind of demonstration. You know, the president have decided to align himself with people who cannot help him, and just decided to do things that he sees or he perceives benefits him and his cohort and with the Western world. You know, things happen. But for sure, I want to tell you, if you bury your head into the sand and you don't want to agree, and you are stating that these people are gangs and the gangs infiltrated the demonstrations, and you are calling people, because the majority of Kenyans, in the entire Kenyans, of all walks of the life, the entire 47 counties, people rioted. And that was a statement made to the head of state, that if the head of state now calling them criminals, these things has angered majority of Kenyans. And these things, the majority of Kenyans are not taking it solo and not even bending. And I even promising the president that on Thursday, tomorrow, they are trooping it again to the stage, and they're taking it even a little bit longer. Another thing, the occupations and the security breach of the parliament, of the National Parliament or National Assembly, has ever been in the history of Kenya. It was the first time the Gen Z generation decided to breach that security. You know, even the dreaded Mau Mau, who were liberating Kenya by then during the pre-colonial periods, never fathomed to did it. Even the dreaded multipartyism liberators that were feared, that brought the clamor of multipartyism, never succeeded to preoccupy the National Assembly going forward. So it was the first thing in the history, in the entire history of Kenya. So this is what made the president to be so hungry. And that is a clear statement to showcase that Kenyans are bitter and so hungry. Because the financial bill itself is being forced into their throat by the International Monetary Funds. Are you there? And the Kenyans have just decided they don't want to clamor the Western kind of rule, the Western kind of machination. They just decided and said to the president, no. And this is how the Kenyan elite decided to respond to the president of Kenya after the status of the nation, its nation's address.
A short response to William Ruto. Mr. William Ruto, Kenyans have rejected you. They have rejected you in their millions. They have rejected you from Mandera to Mombasa, from Kisumu to Kakamega to Busia to Turkana. They have rejected you in Nairobi and all the cities and towns and villages of Kenya. This is not a small thing, and it is not something that has happened before. Kenyans of all generations, all ages, have rejected you, William Ruto. It is not just the Gen Zs. It is not just the millennials. It is not the so-called criminals that, quote, infiltrated the protests. The protests that have been taking place in Kenya, from coast to coast, from north to south, east to west, have been peaceful and have been led by well-educated, articulate, focused and disciplined Kenyans. They made a very simple demand that you should have met. They say, withdraw Finance Bill 2024. You could have done that last week. You ought not to have tabled it in Parliament because this is an alien anti-people bill which was drafted by the IMF and the World Bank in Washington. It's not our bill. Kenyans are taxed to death. You've turned Kenya into an outlier state that kneels before the Western world. You thought you could loot Kenya, just like your predecessors have done. And we have said no. Listen to us. And we are not begging, we are making demands. And we are saying if you don't withdraw Finance Bill 2024, and if you don't resign, we will remove you from power.
So welcome back, guys. So the main reasons why you see from that talk, these are the people and one of the person that the presidential nation of address really angered him. And he decided to talk to the younger generation. We call the Gen Z, the Generation Z. You know, the Generation Z have just decided to get a full throttle and want to oust the president and overthrow the president out of power just because of three main things. And they will do it. To continue with this video, who are the Generation Z? The Gen Zs, these are the younger people who are so educated. They are educated because they are well educated, they go to school, they went to school, graduated, and the majority of them are just sitting home without no jobs. Which means these are the very risky youths that anytime can decide to do anything. Which means they care less, they will come for you. Are you there? So which means they know the war that they're fighting. They know the repercussions and they are coming with you with the facts. And what all that they need basic things to be done. They said no to financial bill, and they cannot be subjected to the Western kind of rule. They've just refused. And they're telling the president, you withdraw the financial bill or resign from the power because you've completely failed. Are you there? They were even wearing t-shirts written that we are not our ancestors because the government and the other predecessors have really come and involved themselves to the politics of deception, telling people things that are not well in tandem or well alignment with their own situation. Which means the Gen Zs are not gullible. The Gen Zs have seen majority of things and they're saying they are not their ancestors or their parents. They are different kind of generations. Therefore, that's why they've taken it upon themselves to fight. So they come and challenge you with facts. They come knowing the kind of war they're fighting. Number two, the Gen Zs are technological savvy, which means they know how to navigate with the technological issues. Their kind of mobilization is digital. That's why they even beat the police and security contingent on how to do their things, because the security contingent, as the country now, they're just merely analog, because their mobilization is based on digital. Even at a time the president and the nation itself give a blackout and decided to block the internet, the General Z decided to hack the whole system of the government and the database so that they could provide the direction, so that they could even communicate. Because they all went and hacked the database of the president, the database of the National Assembly, and decided to even breach the National Assembly, the Parliament building, burn it down. That's how full throttle they are. Which means when you are planning, thinking that you are ahead of them, there are 3 steps head away from you. They'll beat you into your entire game. And they're saying they are coming for you. Number 3, the Gen Zs are tribeless, are formless. There is no leader. There is no organization. Such that if the president is saying that he wants to meet Gen Zs, whom do you want to meet? You will not meet anyone, which means you cannot thwart them. because it is a movement that its time has come, its time has ensued, that their way of thinking also is wired differently, so that there's no one who will claim that this is my organization. You arrest one person or three people, there is a whole lot of group who shall continue with the fight. So you don't know the kind of war, the kind of generations you are fighting, because these people think differently. These people, how they are wired to think, they can just decide, we don't want you with the entire opposition, so you go. We want our own, or let things work. If you don't want things to work, move. These are the generations that tread on the truth. They want you to fulfill the promise that you made during campaign because they voted for you. It's a generation that want things to work. It's not a generation you tell them wait, because you promised. They gave you a mandate to rule because on what you promised. And now you're making them to believe that you aren't. You duped them. So that is a nutshell and a short description of GenZ. I don't know what you think. Until next time, this is Senior Zach.